What is up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and today I've got part 2 of the Tri-Brigade DPE combo guide. In this video, I really want to discuss how to play through and around different hand traps and disruptions, because learning the basic plays is pretty easy, it's a prerequisite, but mastering them and learning how to play around different things is what separates the winners from the losers, and ultimately this video is going to help you win more games, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 of the combo guide and need to learn the basic combos, most of which allow you to end on a board of DPE plus Revolt, I will put a link to the part 1 of the combo guide in the description, as well as a link to the deck profile, and so check those out if needed or interested, but the following plays are where it really gets interesting. And today, we'll be starting with Rescue Cat. Rescue Cat is the poster pet for cards that lose to hand traps, or so a lot of players think. But let's look at how easily we can play around them in different scenarios. Rescue Cat's effect is simple enough. It's an on-field ignition effect. You summon it, use the effect, send itself to the graveyard, summon 2 level 3 or lower beasts from your deck, which in our case our options are Kitt and Karis. Then from there you continue your plays. But when it comes to disruption, because it's an ignition effect on the field, before you use the effect after you summon it, you're very vulnerable to effect negation, such as cards like Imperm and Valor and Imperm I mean. And then because it special summons monsters from the deck, you're also very vulnerable to Ash Blossom. And then on top of that, because you have to summon Cat, then summon the 2 other cards from your deck, you're summoning a lot of monsters, and so obviously you have to worry about Nibiru as well. And we are going to talk about ways to play through all of it. And now straight up, I do have to say that Ash, Valor, and Imperm all will stop Rescue Cat by itself. Like that one card, if you only have Rescue Cat, will stop you. But if you have another Tri-Brigade monster, you can kind of play around them to an extent, and we'll definitely get to those in a minute, but Rescue Cat alone simply isn't enough. Nib, however, can be played around, and so let's go ahead and examine that scenario. So if we just look at the basic Rescue Cat play, we normal summon Rescue Cat. If the opponent has Valor or Imperm, our turn's just over, so we're not even going to worry about those in this combo. If we activate the effect and they've got an Ash, again, our turn is just over, so we're not going to worry about that. If they have any of those hand traps, while we only have normal summon Rescue Cat and nothing else in hand, well, we probably lose. And so we have to assume that if this is resolving, they don't have those cards, now we only have to play under Nib. And so in that case, in the normal combo, you would summon the Rescue Cat, use the effect, you would summon your Kitt, your Karis, link those away for a copy of Blossom. Now you would trigger Kitt's effect in graveyard, send Nerval to the graveyard. Nerval can search another Tri-Brigade monster, let's say Fraktall for the sake of example. Now you would activate Blossom's effect, special summon the Fraktall. And so that's the way the normal combo goes. Then you would banish 2 Tri-Brigades from your graveyard, summon out your bear, summon Anaconda, and then DPE. So that's the way the standard combos goes. But if we're trying to play around Nib, the issue is that this is our 5th summon. So we have the Rescue Cat as summon number 1, Kitt and Karis as 2 and 3, Blossom as 4, and whatever other Tri-Brigade monster we have as summon number 5. So if we get nibbed here, then we kind of hard lose, because all we would get is Blossom's effect, and then that's it. We better hope that we draw something really good with a Blossom, otherwise we would be ending our turn with no disruptions, no follow-up, nothing. So we'd have to just draw really, really well. So, I mean, let me just grab the rest of the deck really quick and see. So you just draw one card. This one card has to save you, or you have to have hard drawn or opened with something else good. So, oh, well, I guess in this case you just win. You're playing Sky Strikers, game over. But in most cases, you don't want to rely on that as your sole purpose of playing around Nib. But in all seriousness, there are ways that we can modify this play a little bit in order to play around Nib a lot better. But first, if you're still watching, thank you so much, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, or subscribe to the channel watching this video. You guys know what I mean. Click all those buttons down below. But again, I want to clarify and emphasize that Nib is not as much of a problem as you would think, and we have multiple ways of playing around it. Like for other hand traps, you know, classic ways work, such as baiting them out, chain blocking, structuring plays in order to check for other hand traps, all of which we're going to cover in this video. And then we also have potential main deck outs to a lot of the hand traps as well, such as Gamma for the Ash Blossom on Rescue Cat or on Fraktall. We have Called by the Grave for Ash Blossom or Veiler. Then we have Crossout Designator for pretty much anything, including Nib. But assuming we don't have these, we really have to play around Nib because of how impactful it is. Because we generally only have 2 lines of play. We've got our normal summon, then we've got our Karis summon. And if any of that gets disrupted, it can be very hard to continue, and a well-timed Nib, well for the opponent, bad for us, can effectively leave us with nothing. However, we do have some answers, we do have some extra deck monsters that allow us to play through Nib to an extent. And so, there are 5 of them. We've seen one of them, we've seen it in the original combo, that being Blossom. Blossom's the first one. And so Blossom, along with your other Tri-Brigade Link monsters such as Bear and Omen, when they're tributed, they get their graveyard effects. And so with Blossom, you get to draw and then put a card back. And if you draw into like a Fusion Destiny or a Revolt or something else, more defense, it can sort of help you at least survive your opponent's turn. With Bear, you're searching Revolt, so at least you're getting some guaranteed defense that way. And with Omen, you can search a monster. So if you haven't normal summoned, you can search Rescue Cat sometimes, and then summon Rescue Cat and continue. Or you can search something to discard for your Karis, or search Karis and extend from there. So any of these being tributed by Nib isn't so bad. And there are a lot of combos where you can actually structure your plays to where, you know, you're summoning multiples of these and creating scenarios where your opponent doesn't want to drop Nib. Then all of a sudden, you just summon Appaloosa. Now they can't summon Nib, and then from there you're free to go. And so Appaloosa is another card that allows us to play around Nib to an extent. And then finally we have good old DPE, Enforcer. Enforcer is also really good to play around with Nib because if it's on the field, and this is like your 5th summon, if your opponent tries to activate Nib, you can just chain DPE, destroy itself, and then that's going to trigger the graveyard effect, DPE comes back in the standby phase, and you're good. The only thing to be careful with is you don't want to activate DPE during your main phase to like clear space or something. And so you don't want to end up with a scenario where you've got Chainlink 1 DPE, Chainlink 2 Nib, because in that scenario, Nib tributes the DPE, which does not trigger the graveyard effect, and so you just lose your Enforcer in that case. So let's say you ended with a board of Anaconda, Enforcer, Karis, Revolt, and in this case you didn't properly summon any of the Tri-Brigade Link monsters, and so to revolve your Revolt you have to summon 4 of your Tri-Brigade main deck monsters. But you can't, because you have 2 monsters in your main monster zone. And so in this scenario, you actually cannot resolve your Revolt to summon Omen, which means you only have 1 form of disruption. So you have to use DPE in this case to clear up some of your space in your main monster zones. But again, you don't want to do this in your main phase because Chainlink 1 Enforcer, Chainlink 2 Nib just wrecks you. Another solution would be to just use DPE's effect first on your opponent's turn, and then activate Revolt afterwards. DPE can just clear space on their turn, then you don't have to worry about it. But the downside to that is then you just lose to a card like Forbidden Droplets or Chalice or something, because then on your opponent's turn they just negate your DPE, and then you can't use DPE or Revolt. So you don't want to lose to that. You also don't want to lose to a Kaiju, which exists in this format for some reason, but you don't want to get your DPE tributed, and then again you've got 2 in main monster zone, Revolt's dead. You don't want to lose to either of those. The best way is just to use DPE in your end phase or something, and then that way you clear space from your main monster zones, and then it comes back in your opponent's standby phase. And they can't Nib you because Nib can only be used in the main phase. So that's just something to keep in mind. There are many other scenarios, but do not lose to Chainlink 1 DPE, Chainlink 2 Nib. That stinks. Don't do that. But let's go back to that standard Rescue Cat play and see what we can do in that scenario to play around Nib. So again, what you can do is normal summon Cat. You have to assume they don't have Veiler and Imperm in this case, otherwise you know your turn ends. Activate Cat effect, again assuming no Ash because also your turn ends. You summon your Kitt and then your Nerval, or Kitt and Karis, and then from there you link them away. And again, this is summons 2 and 3. So we don't want to go Blossom because Blossom summoning whatever you search, you just get, if they have Nib, you get Nibbed and you lose, so you don't want to make that play. The other option is for Link 2s at least, is you can go Bear, and then use your Kitt effect, dump Nerval, search Fraktall, and now you have a follow-up for your next turn. You didn't summon 5 times, so you don't get hit with Nib, and again, you've got a follow-up, so that's not horrible if the rest of your hand is good and defensive. So if, let's say, another card in your hand is Fusion Destiny, this is only summon number 4. Summon number 5 can be your Enforcer, and then you're good from there. But again, only looking at if we have Rescue Cat. Something else that you could do instead would be to just summon out Anaconda. And so Anaconda would be your 4th summon, use the effect, DPE is your 5th summon, and then you're good from there. So you'd have DPE, and you'd have a lot of follow-up between the Fraktall that you searched, as well as the Celestial in your graveyard. Now, if you have any other Tri-Brigade monster in your hand, then you can obviously extend a lot more. But even if you have a non-Tri-Brigade monster in your hand, let's say like any other Beast Warrior, Winged Beast, like let's say you have a 2nd copy of Rescue Cat or a DD Crow in your hand, you can also extend with these as well. And so let's go back a couple of steps. So let's say we open up with 2 copies of Rescue Cat. It's a 3 of, so it's pretty likely that it's going to happen at some point or another. Here's a combo that you could do to play through Nib. So you normal summon your cat, activate the effect, starts off the exact same way, Kitt, Karis, link both of those away, and you can go into a copy of Bear. Next, Kitt's effect in the graveyard, dump Nerval. Nerval can add a copy of Karis to your hand. So now in your hand, you've got Rescue Cat Karis, and then you've got Bear on board. And so Bear's your 4th summon. The good thing about this is that if you get nibbed on your 5th summon, at least you're searching Revolt, so that's pretty fine. But from here, what we can do is activate the Karis' effect, discard the 2nd Rescue Cat, and now the Karis on board can make some plays for you pretty much. And at any point if your opponent nibs, you're gonna have Bear's effect getting you Revolt. So from here, you can activate the Karis' effect. You have a couple different options really, but I guess probably the simplest would be to just banish 2, or nah, you can go balls to the wall. You could banish 4 even. Banish 4, go for an Omen. Now your opponent's definitely not hitting you with a nib because you're getting Revolt and a search. So then from here, you can link both of these into a Blossom. That triggers Omen's effect. That allows you to search another Tri-Brigade monster. Let's say Fraktall. We didn't use this on-field effect. Now we can use Blossom's effect, summon the Fraktall. We can use Fraktall's effect to banish 2 more. Go into... And also don't block your zones. You do have to be wary of zones in this deck. I just don't have as much, pretty much camera space, so that's why everything's kind of condensed. But you can go into double Dragon Lords. Then from here, you can link away the Blossom and the Fraktall. That can go for your Anaconda. And Anaconda can get you to your DPE. And at any point, if they nibbed you, you would have got Bear's effect for Revolt. And so it doesn't completely protect you from nib, but it does insulate you to an extent to where if they have it, you at least end on some form of disruption. If they don't have it, then you still can just use DPE to pop the Bear, get your Revolt, and have DPE Revolt double Dragon Lords. So that's also pretty good. Something else that you could do that's a little bit safer, because again, you don't want to make this play and then lose to Chain Link 1, DPE Chain Link 2 nib. Like that would be pretty bad. But what you can also do is if we go back one step to where we have this board, we can also just link these 3 away. Like our opponent's not going to nib this board because we're getting a search and a draw. So that's like something they probably don't want to do. They'd effectively just be trading nib for double Dragon Lords. But what we can do from here is also link these away into an Appaloosa. It then still resolve Bear's effect to get to Revolt, and then we have Appaloosa with 3 negates, a double Dragon Lords, and a Revolt. So pretty good board. and all you needed was a second beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster in your hand. And it's like, if you go into that standard play, yeah, you lose to Nib, but if you're cognizant of what you lose to and you're trying to play around Nib, it can definitely be done to an extent. But now let's take a look at how Rescue Cat plays through and around other forms of disruption. Because with this, we kind of had to make the assumptions at the start that the opponent had Nib and not like Ashe, Veiler, or Imperm. But in the next set of combos, I want to discuss if they do have these and or Nib and you don't know, how to play around all of them. And now just to summarize a little bit, if all you have is a Rescue Cat, then you're going to lose to pretty much Ashe, Imperm, Veiler. All of those stop your plays, but if your opponent has a Nib, you can go Anaconda DPE. Anaconda will be your 4th summon DPE on 5. That's going to protect you from Nib. Or if you have any other beast, beast warrior, winged beast, Tri-Brigade, anything else in your hand, then you can just summon Bear on 4, search Karas, and then extend from Karas. And then at that point, if they do drop Nib on you, you at least search Revolt and potentially resolve even more Tri-Brigade effects depending on how far they let you go. You can even end on a board with Appaloosa, that way you can avoid like the good old, end of main phase Nib too. Because that happens. You gotta play around that too. You don't want to lose to that. You don't want to lose to Chainlink 1, not Anaconda, but Chainlink 1 DPE, Chainlink 2 Nib either. And so you gotta play around everything. You don't want to set yourself up for a situation to where you just lose to a single Nib dropped at the wrong time. But now let's look at how we can play around everything, including the Ashes, the Imperms, the Veilers, and other stuff. So let's look at a situation where you have Rescue Cat plus Fraktall. And again, in this scenario, we are going to play around any and all hand traps. We don't know what the opponent has, we just gotta play. And so, what you don't want to do is you don't want to start by normal summoning Rescue Cat, because same thing, if this gets Ashed, Imperm, Veilered, then your turn is over because you've already normal summoned and you don't have enough beast, beast warrior, or winged beast to even use Fraktall, dump Nerval, search Karas, and then use Karas' effect. Because let's say this is just all we have, these two and then 3 or 4 spell cards. So we can't just start off by summoning Rescue Cat, it's way too risky. What you want to do instead is activate Fraktall's effect. If they negate Fraktall's effect with an Ash Blossom, then we could just summon Rescue Cat and go off from there, but at least we checked for it. And so that's sort of the way you have to make these plays. You have to systematically bait out these hand traps and check for them so that you can make the most optimal play. And so we're going to start by using Fraktall's effect, dump a Kitt to the graveyard, and then dump Nerval to the graveyard. Use Nerval's effect to search search a copy of Karas. And so we've got Cat, Karas in hand. Then from here, again, if they had Ash Blossom, they would have negated the Nerval, we summon Rescue Cat, we go off from there. If they don't have Ash Blossom, we still don't want to just summon the Rescue Cat, because if we use the effect and they held that Ash, we still lose to it, or if they have the Veiler or Imperm, we'd lose to that as well. So we don't want to make this play. Instead, we want to actually just use Karas' effect, discard the Cat, summon Karas, and then from here use Karas' effect by banishing 4 cards in the grave. So banish the entire graveyard, and then see if the opponent has something. Now at this point we can pretty much assume they don't have Ash. If they did have it, it doesn't do anything from here. But now the main thing is just Imperm or Veiler. And if they have it, then honestly they just have it and we'd be in a really tough spot. But it will be a lot better for them to Veiler here than to Veiler on that Rescue Cat summon, because at least now we know we don't lose to Ash. And if we do get Veilered here, because we haven't normal summoned, we can just summon our own copy of, Effect Veiler, and then link into an Anaconda, and then summon out our own DPE. So even if they have that Veiler or Imperm, we can end on DPE, which is pretty good versus just having the Rescue Cat. So it puts them in a situation to where even if they have it, we can potentially have our way out of it. So we've played around Ash and kind of played around Veiler or Imperm to an extent. Now the other thing I do want to mention is that we used Karas' effect. However, if it gets negated, you can still, or the restriction on it does not apply anymore. I'm trying to focus in on the effect, but the effect of special summon link monsters from the extra deck, it uses the clause also and then has the restriction. And so if the main effect gets negated, then the also part is also negated. And therefore, if you activate Karis' effect or any Tri-Brigade monster's effect to special summon a Link monster from the extra deck, but that effect is negated, you are not locked in to only using Beast Beast Warrior Wing Beast as Link material. Definitely something you want to keep in mind, because that is a big point of playing around hand traps, or it's a big feature of how we do it in this deck. Now, if they don't have the Veiler or the Imperm, then the way that combo continues would be, because we banished 4, we obviously would be special summoning an Omen from our extra deck. And so at this point, we can pretty much assume that the opponent does not have Ash, Veiler, or Imperm. Now the main thing to worry about is going to be Nib. And so this was summon 1, this is summon 2. From here, we link both of these away to summon out a Blossom. That triggers Omen's effect. We've got a bunch of banished Beast, Beast Warrior, Wing Beast. And so we can just search any Tri-Brigade monster from our deck to our hand. We just want to search something whose effect on field that we haven't used. We've used Karis, so we don't want to search another Karis. We can search, like, it really doesn't matter, let's say a Fraktall. Then we use Blossom's effect, special summon the Fraktall. So that was summon 3, 4. Now use Fraktall's effect, banish the 2 in our graveyard, the Omen and the Karis. That gets us to bear on summon number 5. And so at this point, if the opponent wants to nib us, we're getting a draw and a search. This can potentially get us to 2 disruptions, and so although we don't completely and fully play around Nib, we can play around it to an extent. Then from here, if they don't have Nib, then we can link away the Blossom and the Fraktall, go for Anaconda, get DPE, and this is full combo. And so this would be how we want to go through that play to play around getting Ash, Veiler, Impermed, or Nibbed, and setting us up so that if they have any of those, we at least can play around it and not just be forced to end our turn off of a normal summon Rescue Cat. Don't make that play. Another thing to note is because we hard summon the Blossom, when we use our Revolt later on the opponent's turn, we can summon back the Blossom with the Revolt. That gets us another draw. So on the opponent's turn, we could potentially draw into another hand trap. And then another option we have, if let's say we hard drew Revolt in that hand, if we really wanted to play under Nib, remember this was summon 1, and then this is summon 2. From here we can just link these off into our Anaconda, summon 3, activate the effect, and then summon 4 DPE. And I obviously missed the chance to do this, but when we linked off the Omen, we can use that effect to search some disruption too. So we can search a follow-up like a Fraktall for next turn, or we can search a DD Crow and then end on like DPE, Crow, Revolt, and then Revolt's going to get us a follow-up anyways because we're going to be resolving a Nerval off of that effect. And so we have many different options for having Rescue Cat plus Fraktall and playing through or around multiple hand traps. If this was the play that you were going to go into, but let's say you drew your copy of Celestial, then instead of going into Omen, you could use Karis to just summon Blossom. And then when you link into Anaconda, you can draw a new card, shuffle back your Celestial or your Dasher or a Fusion Destiny or something like that. Maybe not Fusion Destiny, but you can shuffle something else back, and then use Anaconda's effect to just dump it to the graveyard. And so again, we'd be playing under Nib. We wouldn't be losing to just like an Ash or Veiler or Imperm. So again, playing under all the hand traps, still ending with multiple disruptions. Alright, so for this combo, we're gonna have Cat plus either Kitt or Nerval. It all works out pretty much the same. And the same exact things apply. The only sort of stipulation here is that we've got 2 normal summons. What are we gonna do? And again, if we start by just summoning Cat, we lose to every single hand trap under the sun. We lose to Ash, we lose to Veiler, Imperm, anything. So we do not want to just normal summon Cat, activate effect. What we'd rather do is normal summon Kitt, and then link off the Kitt into a copy of Almirage. Now we activate Kitt's effect, dump Nerval to the graveyard, and then use Nerval's effect to search Karis. And while yes, if our opponent were to Ash the Kitt or the Nerval, our turn would be over. But the same thing will be true if we started off with Rescue Cat. However, the difference in this play is it allows us to play around Veil or Imperm a little bit. And so same as before, we'd activate Karis's effect, discard the Rescue Cat, summon Karis, and then from here we can actually start playing. We can banish 2, and then try to use the effect. If our opponent doesn't have any effect negation, cool, we can continue our plays. But if they do have effect negation, then again, we're not locked into that restriction from Karis's effect, and we can just link off the Almirage and the Karis into Anaconda, and then summon out DPE. And so we still lose the Ash in this case, but we don't lose to effect negation anymore. So that's sort of the key. If they don't have the effect negation and they don't have the Ash Blossom, then what we can do from here is 2 options pretty much. We've already summoned once with the Kitt, twice was Almirage, 3 was Karis. What we could do is go summon number 4, Blossom, and then summon number 5 can be Anaconda. That at least gets us the DPE, it gives us a draw and a putback. The downside is obviously Anaconda on 5 makes us really vulnerable to a Nib, and so we don't quite want to make that play. You could just also argue that if you're going to go for Anaconda, you don't have to use Karis's effect, and then if that were the case, this would be summon, let's see, Kitt 1, Almirage 2, Karis 3, Anaconda would be 4, and then DPE would be 5. That would work. However, in that case, we didn't check for Veiler or Imperm, and so if they had it, and then we just linked into an Anaconda and they negated it, well, that'd be pretty bad, right? We'd be ending on nothing. And so you don't want to make that play either. You at least want to check for the Veiler or Imperm by activating Karis's effect. But what I think the safest play is to actually just go ahead and summon a Bear. So in this case, Bear is going to be your 4th summon, and then you can just link away the Karis and the Bear for a Blossom, and this will be your 5th summon. So in this case, they probably don't nib you anyways, and oh, by the way, Bear effect search Revolt. So you're gonna have Revolt as your main disruption. They probably don't nib you if they do have it, because like, why nib this board? It just gives you an extra draw and a putback, and you still have access to Revolt, so you still have your disruption. Another option would be going for Rugal. However, it's nice to have a hard summon Blossom in the grave for the future. And so I do like going into Blossom for this play. Rugal is also, you know, it works. It can potentially get you a follow-up on your next turn, but Revolt will automatically get you a follow-up on your next turn. So it's not quite as useful, it's a little bit redundant. And then another option from this line of play would also be to use Bear's on-field effect. You could do that as well, and if you do, that would allow you to extend a lot more because you already have stuff banished. You could summon it back, link stuff away, and really get some more plays going. However, at that point, you really just have to think that they're maybe holding their effect negation. Like, some players will hold it for just Anaconda, and then if you do this, well, they possibly might negate that. So maybe they let Karis's effect go through, but if you discard 2 cards going for, you know, a Bear effect, that's big bait right there. You also would be playing more into the Nib, so again, even if you get nibbed, you get to search Revolt, but in this case you're losing 2 cards out of your hand too, which makes it a little bit more questionable. But generally speaking though, if, you know, it's late into an event, and you have to assume your opponent's good at this point, so they're not just like waiting for you to make mistakes, it's best to just go for the safe play, link these into a Blossom, get your Revolt, and then depend on the rest of your hand to carry you to the finish line, because you don't want to, you know, when all the marbles are on the line, lose to a nib because you overextended. You don't want to make that either. You don't want to do that either, I should say. And now the final thing that I want to mention about Rescue Cat is its interactions with Fogblade. This is going to be a huge interaction next format or after Grand Creators once we get the Adventurer token archetype, because we're going to start seeing a lot more Phantom Knight Adventure decks, and Fogblade is one of their main forms of disruption. And so I feel it necessary to mention that Fogblade actually does not interact with Rescue Cat at all. Fogblade cannot negate Rescue Cat. And the reason for that is, let's see if I can focus on the effect. Hopefully you guys can see this, but Fogblade reads target one effect monster on the field, negate that face-up monster's effects. And so the effects are only negated of that face-up monster on the field. And so if you summon Rescue Cat and your opponent activates Fog Blade, you can still activate the effect. So you activate the effect, the cost is distributed itself. It is no longer face-up on the field. Therefore, it can resolve because Fog Blade specifically says negate that face-up monster's effects. And that's very different than a card like Valor or Imperm, which just negates that card's effect. Like, you target that face-up monster, that monster's effects are negated. Whereas Fog Blade only negates it while face-up. And so Fog Blade does not stop Rescue Cat at all, and that actually gives this deck a pretty good advantage versus them. Of course, you still have to deal with often a Rusty Pop or hand traps, the Adventurer stuff. You still have other things to worry about, but at least this is one or two less things to deal with, which make it a lot more winnable, and it lets you just focus on their monsters, so cards like Dark Ruler No More, Droplets, Chalice are all just a lot better. But moving on, let's talk about how the Tri-Brigade engine plays around hand traps as well, like without Rescue Cat. And so, first of all, a single hand trap will stop any of your plays. Like again, if you saw the combo guide part 1, any 2 Tri-Brigade monsters is full combo, but a single hand trap will stop it, if it's the right one. And there's often no way around it due to the linearity of the combos. However, when you do have multiple options, some are better than others and you have to sort of play the field. But there are 2 rules that I generally try to go by. The first is that if you have Karis, save your normal summon. The reason for that being, if you have any extra normal summons in your hand, a Valor, an Ash, anything like that, you can summon that and often just summon Anaconda and DPE. Versus if you have the option of starting with your normal summon and it gets stopped, then you're just sort of out of luck. The second rule that I go by is that whenever you have a Fraktall, you just have to pick your poison. And so remember, there are 2 lines of play that Tri-Brigade decks typically have, and so you have to be intentional with what you're playing around, because you've only got your normal summon or your Karis summon. If one of those gets stopped, and they both get stopped by different things, I should add, then you're going to be in a tough scenario. So you have to play around whatever you want to play around intentionally. Pick your poison. So let's say, for example, we open up with Kitt plus Fraktall. Well, if we were to start by using our Fraktall's effect, using Fraktall's effect to dump Nerval, and then Nerval gets ashed, that would be fine. We can just normal summon Kitt, banish 2 for Kitt's effect, and continue playing. That wouldn't be too bad at all. Fraktall plays around Ash quite well, actually. The downside, though, is if our opponent has Imperm or Valor, and they Valor this effect, well, that's all we got, and then we also burned up a bunch of our graveyard resources. And so Fraktall plays, or things that start with Fraktall, are good against Ash, but not good against effect negation. On the other hand, if again we have Kitt plus Fraktall, if we start by normal summoning Kitt, and then use Kitt to link into an Almirage, now use Kitt's effect to dump our Nerval. Nerval effect can search Karis, and if they have Ash in this scenario, that would be that'd be pretty bad, because then we just have Fraktall in hand, we've normal summon, so this wouldn't do us anything. And so if we start with our normal summon, then we lose a lot harder to Ash. But if they don't have Ash and we're able to get to this point to where we search a Karis, we summon Karis by discarding, something else. And now from here, if they have Imperm or Valor and they negate the Karis' effect, that's fine. We got this Almirage that we can still link with it to just go Anaconda, DPE, and we're good. And that's what I mean by having to pick your poison. Because if you have, in this example, Kitt plus Fraktall, if you start with Fraktall, you dump your Kitt, your Nerval. If they have Ash Blossom, that's cool. You just summon your other Tri-Brigade monster, banish some stuff from your graveyard, continue playing. So Fraktall plays around Ash very well. But if you start by normal summoning your Tri-Brigade monster, going in the Almirage, using Kitt or Nerval to search into a Karis, or something to discard for Karis, that play loses a lot harder to Ash. But if it's Valor or Imperm they have, you can play around it very well, because you can just make Anaconda DPE. And so one line of play plays around Ash Blossom very well, the other line of play plays around effect negation very well. And so you just have to pick your poison. But the more Beast, Beast Warrior, Winged Beast you have in hand, the easier it is to play around those disruptions. So if, let's say in this scenario, again we start by normal summoning Kitt, and then they they ash your Nerval, but you already had an extra Beast Warrior Wing Beast in your hand, okay fine, they ash your Nerval, you can still just use Karis's effect to summon itself and continue. And so, you know, if you have that extra monster in your hand, you can play around Ash, and you can play around Imperm or Veiler. If you started with a Fraktall play, and you've got another Beast Warrior in your hand, then that also isn't so bad. So say you start by playing Fraktall, and then, again, they have the Imperm or the Veiler. That's fine. So you dump Kitt, dump Nerval, or not the Nerval in your hand, but you dump another Nerval. Where is it? And then use Nerval to search, I don't know, some other monster. You still haven't normal summoned. And so if they've got one Veiler, you can just use your Karis's effect, summon it. You've got 4 engraved, so you banish 2. If they negate it, that's fine. You normal summon, banish 2 more. So that one Veiler or that one Imperm didn't do anything. If they've got the Ash, that also doesn't do anything. And so the more monsters you have in your hand, the easier it is to play around hand traps. You just have to be cognizant of what you have, what it loses to, and then, you know, take your poison. These same rules extend to when you're going second. You just have to consider what you're going against. And so let's say, for example, you're playing against Swordsoul, and they end with a board of Baron plus Grandmaster. And so Baron is an Omni negate that can negate anything, and then Grandmaster is a monster negate. Let's say you have Imperm plus Fraktall plus Kitt or Nerval or something like that. What you can do in that scenario is activate the Imperm negating the Baron. That way you've gotten rid of the Omni negate. Now the only thing you have to worry about is a monster negate, but we can play around monster negation pretty easily. And so what we want to do in this case is summon our Kitt, link Kitt away into a copy of Almirage, Kitt's effect, dump Nerval, Nerval effect, add Karis, activate Karis's effect, discard Fraktall, summon Karis. Then from here, activate the Karis effect, banish 2, and the opponent likely will negate that with the Grandmaster. If they negate it with the Grandmaster, that's fine. You just link these away for, let's see, good old Anaconda. Use the effect, summon DPE. Then from here, you can use DPE's effect, pop Anaconda and Baron or something else in Baron, and then you just attack over the Grandmaster, because remember, DPE has the effect that your opponent's monster lose 200 attack for each D hero in your graveyard. You're going to have 2. Grandmaster's at 28, minus 400. That puts it at 24. And so Enforcer just attacks over it. And so it's not that difficult to play around that board. And if your opponent doesn't negate the Karis, it only gets worse from there. Like, they should really just negate the Karis. But if you make the wrong decision in this scenario, because again, you have to be cognizant of that. So let's say we still negate the Baron, because Baron's obviously like really good. But let's say we instead decided to use Fraktall from our hand. We use Fraktall in hand to dump Nerval, search Karis, and then even if we use Karis's effect to summon itself, activate Karis's effect, then they negate it. Well, whoops, we don't have that other monster on board. And so unless we have another normal summon in our hand, our turn's over. And so again, you have to pick your poison, but you have to just choose correctly based on what you're playing against. I almost forgot to mention, and maybe I should, but if your opponent doesn't negate the Karis effect on the first example, or whatever number example, but if you're going against the Baron plus the Grandmaster and your opponent doesn't negate Karis's effect, you also just don't want to go into your regular plays, because your regular plays don't necessarily out their board, because you still need to out both Baron and Grandmaster. Otherwise, either of them can just negate either Omen or the Revolt. And so you do have to do things a little bit differently. And so if you were to do that, you use Karis's effect, and then you would summon double Dragon Lords instead of summoning like a Blossom or, you know, something like that. Like, you don't want to just summon Blossom then go DPE then negate Anaconda. You don't want to just summon Bear and then, you know, do something with Bear, link that away, get a Revolt, because then Revolt doesn't break their board either. So you have to force them to negate something and then clear their board from there. And so what you can do is summon double Dragon Lords, use double Dragon Lords effect, tribute the Almirage targeting their Grandmaster. They likely negate this. If not, then they lose. Or I guess they don't lose, but they lose anyways, really. But they're gonna negate that. If not, it just gets bounced. And then from there, you link these away into your Anaconda and DPE. And then DPE still is going to just pop the Baron, attack over something else, or attack directly. But again, it all comes down to just recognizing the correct play. Which is obvious, I guess. That's terrible advice, but if your opponent only has monster negation, start with your normal summon, that way you can get an Almirage on board, then go through Karis. That way if your opponent negates the Karis, you can just go into Anaconda DPE, and then TLDR if your opponent doesn't negate the Karis, then you can just go double Dragon Lords, force their negate, and then go in DPE. And now another card that you have to worry about in the Swordsoul matchup is Blackout. Blackout is actually pretty insane. Being able to destroy 2 of your cards is very difficult to come back from, because again, you only got those 2 lines of play and they're relatively linear, and so you can't risk one of them being destroyed, especially when your opponent has other forms of disruption as well. But typically just a single Blackout can just end your entire turn, depending on when they use it. But fortunately, we have a way of playing through Blackout completely, that being Almirage. Almirage can at least protect one of your cards from being destroyed by Blackout, and then in that case, you can always just protect whatever's going to get you to your next summon, and then keep on extending from there. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So let's say your opponent ends on a board of like Grandmaster, Baron, plus Blackout. And you have your 6-card hand, and you've got like 3 Tri-Brigade monsters. That'll be pretty good. And then you've got a Droplet, and then 2 other useless cards. What you can do is use the Droplets to negate their Baron and their Grandmaster, and then from there, if all they have is Blackout and you've got 3 Tri-Brigade monsters, there's no way they can stop you. Like, it's actually impossible. And so the way you can do it is summon your normal summon monster, whether it be Kitt or Nerval, either way. Then use Kitt to link into Almirage, activate Kitt effect, dump Nerval to the graveyard, Nerval effect search some other Tri-Brigade monster. Let's say a second Kitt, why not? So then from here, if you didn't have Karis, search Karis, by the way, but you definitely want Karis. If you do have it, it doesn't matter what you search. So you've already normal summoned, you've got to use your Karis summon now, and so you discard one of your monsters, whatever, summon Karis. If your opponent tries to Blackout you here, you just Almirage, protect the Karis, and then you're good. But if not, which they probably won't, you can continue. So you can go ahead and banish 2 from your graveyard for Karis' effect. And then that can get you to a copy of Blossom. Also, don't block your link zones. Everything's just kind of compressed on camera, but don't actually summon it here. Let's just do this. Yeah, that's still in frame. But yeah. So then from here, let's say the opponent tries to play Blackout, and they're going to target your Blossom and your Karis. Well, Karis has used the effect already, and so it's fine if they destroy this, but Blossom is the route to your next summon. So you'd want to chain your Almirage, protect your Blossom. And so if that happens, you just, like, let's say that they play Blackout, Karis gets destroyed, you're tributing Almirage, fine, you continue, Blossom effect, summon Fraktall, banish 2, summon Bear. At this point, it's just a standard combo to where you've got Blossom, Bear, a 3rd monster. You can go ahead and summon Anaconda, DPE, and then pop the Baron, attack over the Grandmaster, and you've broken their board completely. And so Blackout did nothing there. But let's say they don't use Blackout. How do we continue? Well, from here, we could just use Blossom's effect to summon. If they try to use Blackout, in this case, let's say they try to pop Fraktall Blossom. Well, because Fraktall gets us to our next summon, this is what we will protect with the Almirage. So they activate Blackout targeting Fraktall Blossom. We chain Almirage targeting Fraktall. So Blossom gets destroyed, Almirage is gone. That's fine. Now we just use Fraktall's effect, banish 2, summon Bear, and then we can just link our other 2 monsters away into Anaconda, Anaconda DPE, boom. So same thing, pop the Baron, attack over the Grandmaster, their board is cleared, and we're still ending on DPE Revolt. So Hitting us there doesn't do anything either. Now from here, what you could do, again assuming they don't black out yet, you're still playing around it, but you've got to clear their board somehow. You can link these away into your bear. Use Fraktall's effect, banish 2, and again, they're probably, if they're going to use blackout, you just protect the Fraktall. Same thing as before. Use the Fraktall's effect, and you can either summon double Dragon Lords or a second Blossom. Either case, it doesn't really matter. And so at this point, this would actually be the worst point for your opponent to use your or use their blackout, because none of your monsters are going to be summoning any other monsters. And so let's say they tried to use blackout to target Fraktall and Blossom. Let's say they did that. Well, we'd still want to use Almirage to protect one of them. And then from here, we just make Anaconda. And again, pop the Baron, attack over the Grandmaster. The downside is we don't get to use the Bear's effect, so we don't have Revolt. But at least we cleared their board, we still have DPE. And so the key is really just using Almirage to protect whatever your next summon is, and then using that protection to link up into a DPE or Anaconda and then DPE, and then DPE just clears their board. If they try to hold blackout for your Anaconda, you obviously just protect Anaconda. So Almirage is a single card that just completely destroys blackout. So if you can negate all the other cards that they have, Almirage gives us pretty good protection. The other tricky thing about going second in that matchup is Protoss, because Protoss will often lock you out of darks, which means you can't summon Omen, you can't summon Anaconda, DPE, none of that stuff. And so it's very tricky to kind of play around that because you still have to clear their board. And the way I kind of like to go about it is, let's say we had the same hand, so let's kind of go back a little bit. And we go back to the point where, and this is assuming they don't have blackout, by the way. If they got blackout Protoss, it's very, very tough to win. But let's say it's when we have the, let's see, so we started with a Karis, actually just start this example over. I don't even remember where we started, but I guess let's not start over, that takes too much time. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if you can't summon darks, your one out to breaking your opponent's board is going to be double Dragon Lords. And so you've got to summon double Dragon Lords, use that to pretty much bounce something. And then if you have a droplets, you can have your opponent's monsters attack, and you can just attack over them. And so if you can attack over you can easily attack over like either Grandmaster or Baron. Both of them would be at 1500 or less. If your opponent summoned them in defense, Grandmaster only has 1000 defense, so that's not that hard to attack over. Baron in defense, however, is, and you actually don't have any non-dark monsters in the extra deck that can attack over a Baron in defense. However, something that I have been sort of testing, and it's not, I don't want to call it bad, but I guess the one option you have is going Appaloosa. Appaloosa for 4 is pretty tough. But one thing that I've been testing as a sort of a flex spot, because you kind of get one flex spot in this deck, is I've been testing one copy of Gaia Saber. That way you can actually attack over a Protoss, not Protoss, but attack over a Baron in defense, because Baron has 2400 defense. This is one of the only non-dark link 3s that you can make with generic link materials that lets you attack over a defense Baron. It's kind of relevant for Protoss, but also maybe not quite worth it either, but just an option I want to toss out there. And so if your opponent's ending on like on Baron, Grandmaster, Protoss, on Dark, you can just use droplets, negate like the Grandmaster, negate the Baron, go through your standard plays, Dragon Lords, bounce the Protoss, and then do your other link plays, get to a Gaia, attack over like the Grandmaster with some other monster or the double Dragon Lords. This can attack over the Baron, and congrats, you've cleared their board and you have disruption. So that is something to consider. But alright guys, that is pretty much for part 2 of this Tri-Brigade DPE combo guide, focusing on how to play through hand traps and disruption. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm pretty sure none of you guys even watched this far into the video, but if you did, let me know. If you would like to see more of these Tri-Brigade DPE videos, like I could always show more combos, such as if you open like Cat plus Fusion Destiny, Cat Revolt, or multiple Tri-Brigades in either one of those cards, or other scenarios, what I'm siding in and out, maybe test hands. If you guys want to see more content around this this deck, just let me know down in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one.